Hey everyone, Travis Rudros Pfeiffer here with a very special guest coming all the way from ReadyCheckRaideo. He is the one and only Magic Man himself, Michael Byrne. Michael, how are you,
Hey,
sir?
what's up, my friend? It's so cool to be on the channel. Thank you so much for the invite. Like we've been friends for a while behind the scenes, making our own content and stuff, and always talking about, oh, we should collaborate on this. We should co-commentate this. We should do this and this. And then now it's finally happened.
Finally, Michael has come back to commentary. No, and you were kind enough to have me on your channel a few times, so it was long past time I returned the favor. Well, and I won't lie, I was kind of inspired too. I know you did a video with Dylan recently, with the villain. That's what I get for going into like
Dylan,
WWE
the villain
mode.
Camacho. I mean, we can't call him Macho because that's taken, so we'll give him the villain. There we go.
Yeah, brother. That's what I get for going into WWE mode. You guys had talked about kind of just the competitive season and like the decks in particular. And I was like,
we talked about what it's like to get in there and compete.
And I'll take your deck and snap it in half. Oh, yeah.
Elizabeth.
Sorry. He's like, I'm playing for 3 rounds. 3 rounds of playtime.
Oh, I don't like it.
Your Macho Man's much better than mine. See, we're just going to be goofy today, but that's okay. That's the fun part. So,
welcome to the FFTCG show where we talk about 80s and 90s wrestling.
Oh, yeah, maybe a card or two at the end. But listen, brother. So now I'm just going to go through all the wrestlers I know. Okay, so what I actually had wanted to talk about, besides all that fun stuff.
Right.
If we were to look at the card game. So this will be State of the Game number 3. And Michael is, of course, a great guest to have on this. If you haven't, of course, check out his stuff on ReadyCheck. I will link all of his relevant stuff in the description below. I know they do the Relic Grind on Thursday nights. A lot of times you stream your locals on Mondays, is it?
Yeah, we basically do it every Monday. We stream our locals, 7 p.m. Eastern. One of our locals, because we have like 3. But the only time that gets canceled is like if I'm driving back from somewhere.
Gotcha.
Like, this past from Monday we didn't do it because I was driving back from Kingston, Canada for their store championship. But most of the time, every Monday you can catch live locals. The Relic Grind on Thursdays is Final Fantasy 14, but it's also all things Square Enix. So we do a show that's dedicated to the Legend review after they've all been revealed and spoiled for each set. You were on one. You'll be on the next one, actually.
Thank you.
Spoiler. It'll be me, you, and Dylan on that show when Opie 20 comes out.
What is this one called? What's the subtitle for this one?
Yeah, I don't know.
Scions of Light. I know the Scions are like on the cover, but I don't remember what the actual title is.
Yeah, I don't know.
Beyond Destiny's what? 21, right?
I think so.
Dawn of Heroes. Dawn of
Heroes. That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
Gonna have a lot of heroes.
So you'll be on the Legend review for that. So like if you play the TCG or just are a Square Enix fanboy, that's a great podcast. And then there's a general gaming one on Saturday nights too. So we do a lot of stuff.
And he's got some of the best production values in the business. Chris, if you love crisp audio and good visuals like I do, you gush all over.
I appreciate that. Work very hard for that. I am the highest quality show you aren't watching.
Exactly. Yeah, that's like the review. That's like the tag review. Highest quality show you've never seen.
Right.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so we know a lot of the decks that we've seen at the time of this recording. We've seen 3 Materia Cups, which was Florida, Kansas City, San Diego. Been a myriad of store championships. You've been to several. So people do kind of have an idea of what's in the meta, but there was something in particular I wanted to talk about, and it's one of my favorite subjects, and it is the elements of the game, right? That's what makes the game interesting, is that you have these 6 elements, technically 8 if you count light and dark, that ideally have a core identity, and they have features you can associate with them. When you say, if I tell you dull freeze, what element do you think of?
Yeah, you automatically go to ice.
Right? If I say haste, what element do you think of?
Yeah, I'm going fire and sometimes lightning.
Right? There you go. So today specifically, and Mike is a very thoughtful person. He's always that's one of the reasons I had to have you on for this, because, right?
The flattery.
He doesn't just blurt out
enough to get my stupid Nats invite yet.
Right?
That's for sure.
Well, we'll go into that near the end.
I keep making all kinds of top cuts, but can't finish it off. The always a bridesmaid, never a bride thing. I'm always a tyro, never a cloud. Like right now.
Do you think that's more frustrating than, or what if you just went and like bombed out at all of them? Which would be worse?
Oh, yeah, I'd rather. I'm having a really good season. Like, I haven't gotten my invite yet, but I can't complain. And I would rather it be this way, where I'm always kind of in it.
Yeah, makes sense.
I'm doing really well, particularly in Swiss. Like, even at Materia Cup, Florida was 5-2, bubbled out at 21st, so was very, very close there. I've made 2 top 8s or 3. I can't remember which at store championships. Like, I have never been worse than X2 in any Swiss event. So I think I would much rather have that and always be in it and get bounced in round 1 than to particularly like drive 7 hours and then go 2 and 4, and you're just like, ugh, I hate life.
Yeah. I know even some of the competitive players were talking about that for like the day 2 skip at nationals. Like, man, could you imagine you don't play day 1, you fly all that way, and then you lose immediately in the first round? It's like, all right, well, I just came here to play one match of Final Fantasy, and then I'm done.
I mean, I know that's a different topic, but that's one you should talk about at some point, the whole day 2 skip thing.
For sure. But we'll get to that another time. So for now, we'll focus on these elements. And in particular, again, Mike's a very thoughtful person. I know you really look at cards in and out, what's good about them, what's bad about them. So I'll pose to you. We'll go through all the elements in the game. You succeed. And I want you to tell me about them. We're going to go 2 forms. One is their mono version. What does mono fire look like by itself right now? Mono wind, mono water, etc. And then we'll go in a support version, because before we even say anything, some people already in their head can go, well, I know which ones are good mono, some are not even competitive. But support-wise, very different. What is fire paired with ice? What is ice paired with wind, etc. So
yeah,
that's
cool.
the
Let's
premise.
do it.
Excellent. So we'll just go right in elemental order, and I'm feeling a little chilly, so we'll warm up with some fire. An element that used to be a meme way back in the pre-Opus 8 days, and then it kind of had a period of dominance.
Yeah.
But it definitely fell off a bit. So mono fire, where do you see it right now?
Not viable. And again, we're all talking more from a competitive spectrum here. Yeah. Like, just not viable at all. Mono fire for me has certain packages that work really, really well. You can do, cool things with Magissa and some nice summons that you don't feel bad about casting in other situations if you can't enable Magissa. You can do some aggressive things with, like 1-drop Alua and Zande and play that type of stuff. It's got these little packages, but they don't, at least from what I've seen and played so far, they don't kind of fit together into a nice mono deck. You can kind of focus on one of those packages and then try to support it, but a lot of times that dips into another color, or you start running fire cards that you're just kind of trying to fill out slots 46 through 50.
Yeah.
The packages are neat. They can definitely win. If somebody pops a Magissa turn 1, has enablers to pop it once or twice in those first 2 turns, and you just had a bad mulligan, you're dead in a competitive environment too. But by itself, the consistency I don't think is there for mono play unless you want to mess with these little packages and supplement them with another element.
So speaking of packages, I really want your opinion on this. What happened to Samurais? Because it seems like since Opus 12, when Tenzin came about, it'll have some sets where it's like, yo, these things are great, and then it disappears. And then it came back, especially in Opus 17 with the Hien. Like, I know there was still always this kind of hesitancy towards them, but they clearly showed up. And is it just that they have to continually get new cards to be relevant? Is it their game plan is just too linear? Like, tell me about Samurais.
Oh, so in my estimation, I hate the Samurais deck.
Oh.
Not personally playing it. It's not my play style, but mono aggression, mono fire. Ironically, though, in Magic, I'm a red black burn player, so that's I guess a totally different story. In the Samurai, I hate the Samurai deck playing against it. And have since Tenzin was a thing, because if you do, it's one of those decks that if you don't have the answer immediately, you're going to lose. And if you have the answer, you probably win. Like, it's a coin toss deck to me. If they can answer your turn 1 Tenzen in a meaningful way, or catch you without a target, or have it whiff, which is generally not going to happen in most samurai builds anymore, but did kind of back in the day, then and there's also a lot now in more colors than just Earth that can address its biggest threats, which are typically coming in the 3-drop variety, which then falls prey to Ixion, which people are teching in for another matchup, which Fire contributes to but can't do by itself, the Cat 13 deck. So I just think, I would agree with you that the play line is a bit linear. Board suppression with a bunch of samurais and start swinging for board clears. And if you have any mitigation for that, whether it be a Y'shtola in Wind to stop an auto ability, and a Mott to make somebody pay for an auto ability, and Ixion to burn 2 and 3 costs, it's just so punishing. And Tenzen now, as opposed to when Tenzen came out, isn't enough to stay ahead if that happens.
Great breakdown. So you mentioned the card. When I think of Fire these days, I think of Amaterasu, of course. I've seen a lot of high level competitive players say that's the only reason Fire's even like talked about is because of Amaterasu. Obviously an incredible summon. So clearly Amaterasu is good enough that it'll probably give some support to Fire in other elements, so I guess I'll move towards that. How is Fire? Obviously, you don't think it's very good right now. Mono element, I would agree. We don't see it anywhere. What about support, and what does it help support right now?
I actually think it's a great support element.
Okay.
In a number of ways. Obviously, Amat is kind of its own bubble.
Sure.
It's strange. Like, remember the cries for Amat to be banned when it came out? Because there was just nothing that did anything remotely like that in the game at the time, and it just shut down so many things. And now you look at it and you're like, it's still a good card, but it sees less play than it did a set ago, which was less than 2 sets ago. Anyway, Amat, good. Any of these, you can tech Braska into certain decks and then capitalize on all summons, including some 5-drop or some Fire summons themselves. You can tech it into Wind with Lulu, and then, damn, a Brunhilde feels real good, right?
Yeah.
Like, anything on the board, if they can't protect it, dies, draw a card, have fun. It's a tremendous support element in a number of ways, particularly Fire Wind, which we don't see a whole lot of. Fire Lightning, particularly in the Cat 13 deck. You're seeing Amat's run in a lot of those, not all, but in a lot of those to kind of try and basically stave off a Shantoto, right? And you're seeing it in summons decks. You're seeing not just Amat, but some other Fire summons creep into there too. I saw, Salamander is kind of making the rounds in some competitive decks we've seen on stream lately. I think Fire has playable summons with some playable packages, but you generally maybe don't put those together. Like, you go play a summons deck and you grab 3 copies of Amat and maybe 1 or 2 Brunhilders, depending on your win con. So I look at it as the support element more for summons, and maybe a 3 to 5 of in your deck. Like, there's not a 50-50 split in most decks.
I think it's in a really good place as a support element that because I can, Fire Ice, Category 6, Fire Wind with Zidane and Lulu, Fire Earth with Bosch and Avalanche, Fire Lightning, of course, Category 13, Fire Water with all the RC. So, like, it has, like, a place in every single other element.
Look at all of the, like, higher marquee decks that we've seen repeatedly at Materia Cups and things like that lately, right? Cat 6, half the deck's Fire, right? Cat 13, half the deck is Fire. Your Iridia summons, you got your Amats in there, and I've seen some people run Brunhilders in there as well to get a little freaky and get a little extra card draw and stuff like that. Like, you do see Fire in marquee decks to great percentages, but it's never going to be by itself, at least not in the current competitive environment.
So, great breakdown with that. And I guess this will be kind of my wrap-up point on fire. Let me tell you a little story, and maybe you can extrapolate something.
Story
deeper
time
from it.
with Travis.
It's story time,
Let's
right?
do it.
So the question I'll pose ahead of this story is, mechanically, does Fire need to do something different? Now, here's the story I have. I was playing in an RVA Weekly, and I was playing Mono Fire. I don't remember if it was this. It might have been like last Opus, but it was sometime pretty recently. I know Mono Water was a thing, so it was at least last Opus.
Okay.
And I got a pretty big field. I had out Jin, I had out Lunith, I had out Squall or something, and I had all these ways to deal ping damage. Like, I really had an overwhelming amount of damage. But this water player has no forwards and 3 monsters on the board. And I realized, I go to combat, I was like, I can't hit any of these. Like, I can't even target them until he decides they're now targetable. And so that just kind of got me thinking, like, man, it really did feel very one-dimensional. It's like, I mean, I can burn and burn and burn till the cows come home, but if I don't have anything relevant to burn, like, I don't know. So I don't know if that, what do you think of that? Or maybe if I missed the mark, is there some other way?
Well,
Just for me, it felt very
so-
one-dimensional.
Right, but it seems thematic though, doesn't it? Right, because the most viable deck competitively to do that to you is water.
Yes.
Which kind of makes sense in
Yeah.
a fire water
That's
sensibility, right? Like, in an ideal world where everything has its polar opposite, that's kind of what I would expect. You also, though, get around that by being much faster to the board than water.
True.
So
Yeah.
you have those two conflicting strategies that, they might have counters for each other and inherent counters for each other, or negate your abilities here and there, but you can jump on it if it can't set up fast enough to get those things out. And if you let it set up fast enough, now you're going to start losing some of your abilities. And I kind of like that dynamic. It's very thematic to me, though. But
that's
frustrating to play against, I'll give you that.
Well, and I guess let me to build on that. Then mechanically, since fire is pretty a straightforward element, it burns stuff, and then it can be fast, right, with haste. Do you think it needs, like, if we wanted, in an ideal world, if we wanted all the elements to be competitive in their mono forms, does it need a new angle, or do you think maybe it just needs better cards, like even more efficient burn or more efficient haste? Or
I don't think it needs a new angle. I actually
better cards.
Yeah, better cards or better things that supplement some of the cool packages that we have right now.
I gotcha.
It has its identity, and it's a very clear identity.
Yeah.
I'm going to ping damage you to death, and I'm going to try and haste to the board to get you to 7 before you even have a chance to really do anything. Aggro is and should always be a viable playstyle.
Yep.
It wasn't for so long, hence the prevalence of mono win for 48 opuses.
Yeah.
Because aggro wasn't viable. And by aggro, by the way, I don't mean, one turn kill or OTK decks.
Yeah.
That's certainly a style of aggro, but you don't have to be an OTK deck to be an aggressive deck. I actually think, and this will come a little later, that fire has stolen some of the identity of a different element.
Oh, interesting.
To the point that this different element, I think, is probably very close to the bottom of the list.
Interesting.
As far as elements go, whether it's solo or even in a support mode.
Gotcha. I'm going to guess that element is purple, but you can confirm for me later.
It's my favorite element,
I know
and it just feels so bad right now.
Well, Lightning will definitely get its day in the sun here shortly, so great thoughts on fire. I really appreciate all that insight. Let's go to the next one in line, an element that I guess I love now because I've played it so much, which is just so ironic because when I started the game, I hate it, and that's ice. And I
hated ice.
I hated
for
ice.
the longest time.
Now somehow I'm the champion of it. But so I think you care about ice too. And ice, I think, is for a lot of people, it's a very unique element, right? Like, it's pretty, Dull Freeze is pretty exclusive to that element. There's very few other ways and other elements to do that. Discard, of course, discard is probably a very loved/hated mechanic depending on where you fall on. So mono ice, can it exist right now? What does it look like? Talk to me about mono ice.
No. I mean, maybe if you wanted to get cheeky and play low to the ground with some Knights package protected by Charlotte and kind of sneak in there and try and get early damage and discards at the same time. It also can do some fun stuff with Crystal Exarch, getting free plays of not necessarily just ice forwards, but allowing you to do sneaky things like bring in White Tiger, an Ice Earth White
yeah.
Tiger off of a free play. The Kefka backup is interesting. Like if you can get it to 5 backups, it's like they have these cards that support, hey, play Ice by itself.
Yeah.
But the payoff is just not there yet. It's got, in my estimation, it's got the weakest lineup of summons across any element right now. Sephiroth is your best Ice summon. And, you know, and you're gonna play him in a combo deck. That said, I hate discard.
You're not alone.
But I played Earth Ice discard, reading the room going into Florida, and I'm glad I did. I think it's an effective counter to things and keeps combo decks in check, right? It's that constant rock, paper, scissors circle of these decks keep these other ones in check. And so it needs to be there. It got a little crazy during Opus 5 with the turbo discard. Theodore, I just want to set that card on fire, but that may just be from this past weekend. Just that one's effectively was my bounce from top 8 was a turn 1 warp Theodore every single game in our 3 games, which was unfortunate, but it happens. As a mono, no, I don't think it can happen right now. I have seen people run it. There's a reason we don't see it topping right now.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Since you brought it up, I'll just ask, discard again. It's always been kind of polarizing in this game. Some people appreciate, like you said, that it can keep decks in check. Of course, I don't think anyone really enjoys playing against it. There's definitely this. Do you think there's any way to fix that, or do you think it's just kind of the very nature of any card game, and especially one in this one where you have to discard to pay for cards, that by its very nature, it's just not going to be an enjoyable or balanced thing to play against, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, discard's never really enjoyable, I don't think. And that's not... FFTCG really screwed it up initially. And got it so wrong so fast. Now they did course correct it, and you could argue like maybe could Gesper come back into the game now? Could a Thaumaturge come back into the game now? There's enough things to deal with those types of things, but that's a different topic for another time. As much as I may not personally like it, it has a place. I don't think it's in a terribly bad spot with Final Fantasy right now. There are a couple of cards that I question, but actually the ones I question more aren't discard related. They're taking resources related. You know, things like the Wind Zidane, you know, where your deck becomes our deck. I think that might be a worse argument for losing resources in my book than discarding. 90% of the time, the discard is always going to be your choice to get rid of your worst card.
Right.
With the exception of like Kate Siths and some oddball stuff like that do something a little bit different. But I think it's in an okay place right now, as aggravating as it is to play against sometimes.
Fair, very fair. All right, well, what about a support element? How obviously you mentioned Ice Earth. We know that's a very prominent one. Ice Wind, of course, immediately comes to mind because that deck is super strong.
Ice Lightning, right? With Alcid, Sephiroth, Hasty Lightning, and all that. That's what I lost to in top 8. And it's a favorable matchup for me. I was playing a Summoner's deck, and it's a favorable matchup in my favor. The Teched-in Theodore really hurt me. It really hurt me. There are some elements in Ice that can literally break other decks if they come down at the right time. And that's why you see it in, I mean, we go back, Cat 6 is a fire ice predominant deck. Sometimes people tech in water to do some stuff there, but usually fire ice. And then you see it in Earth Ice. And then you see it in Ice Lightning. That's 3 of the other 5 elements we have just paired Ice with in a competitive environment. I don't think you can deny that it is, in some ways, a strong support element. Again, the thing that I think keeps it from being one of the stronger support elements is its summons game is just so damn weak. And I really want to see a mechanic taking advantage of freeze. Because I'm sick of freezing something that ends up not mattering because I can't dull it.
Yes.
And I'd really like to see freeze worked in a slightly different way, which I think in turn would open up the summons game for Ice a little bit and start creating a really interesting dynamic. Strong, but maybe not the strongest combined support element.
100%. I know that's been kind of, I've heard it talked about with a lot of people, and it kind of just makes sense too. So I don't know if you have any ideas. what would you want to see with
Ice
freeze?
Wind. We forgot Ice Wind.
Oh yeah, Ice Wind.
four of the 5 other elements.
Yeah.
It's paired with in competitive decks that are on FF decks.
Mainly
right
Ice
now
Water is the only one that's
top.
not really like
Yeah,
showing
that's
up.
really the only one you don't see. Ice Water, Vice Kings, and stuff like that really isn't flowing right now. And I think that's more not so much an indictment on ice, but just so a view of how strong water is by itself, that it doesn't need any of your frozen water to help.
I don't need your ice cubes. I'm plenty cold on my own. No,
room temperature is just fine by me. Baby.
Yeah, right. Well, so you mentioned freeze. Did you have any ideas or thoughts? Like, because I think a lot of people have said that, especially freeze basically having no effect on active cards, like you said, just feels so bad these days. Like, do you have any ideas about what you would like to see them do with that?
I'd like to see, and maybe it's a keyword, maybe it's not. I know Hobby Japan and Square aren't all that keen on adding a bunch of keywords. Then you become Force of Will, right? Where the first page in the starter deck is directions, and you flip it over, and it's all keywords. But I am in favor of like a shatter like type effect, where if something is frozen, I may cast this whatever summon. It will probably be named Shiva, right? Let's cast this Shiva. And I can freeze up to 2 targets. If the target I selected is already frozen, break it instead. Yeah. Something like that, where you can capitalize on, okay, that backup is up. I'm going to dull Vincent and freeze it. And then I'm going to cast this summon and snap it. Just something like that. If you're going to make me have to basically get off 2 effects, or use a card that inherently gives me both, dull and freeze it. Yeah. Then give me a little more payoff sometimes out of that, because it's very predictable. Right now, if I dull or freeze a target, you just look at it as I'd need to get some activation. Right. Where if I have an alternate line of play and I freeze something that's already active, now I'm maybe bluffing, or I actually have the ability to do something else, and activate may not get you out of that danger.
Exactly.
So I like the idea of opening up a little more counterplay there with the freeze mechanic.
Yeah, that's cool. There's an enchantment in Magic the Gathering called Tribute to the World Tree from this set.
Yeah.
And what I love about it is that, so it says if a creature of 3 power or higher enters the field, draw a card. But if it has less power than that, you give it 2 1/1 counters to make it stronger. And that feels good because it doesn't ever feel like there's a dead creature with that. Whereas if it was only 3 or higher, you'd have, this one doesn't, kind of like you said, it wasn't dull, it became active, so it was meaningless. Whereas there, you always get some value out of it, which it would be so appreciated.
Yeah, what was the name? I'm looking it up right now.
Sure.
There was I can't remember. There's a number of cards. I mean, Vincent is a kind of an example of what I'm talking about, right? When you play Vincent onto the field, choose up to 3 backups and freeze them. That can be backbreaking. Yeah. That can absolutely, and it was in one of my matches this past week in the top 8. It was. It put me on. Now it's going to take me 2 turns at least, if I can get rid of that Vincent before I'm going to be able to play Warrior of Light, and that hurt me. But when they don't dull the backups, that feels horrible. Yeah. Like, here's a 3-drop 7K that does nothing. Mm-hmm. Nothing. And can't do anything until its next turn, hoping you dull something.
Exactly.
That feels bad, where there's no alternate line of play.
Yeah, really well said there. Again, so obviously it supports other elements very well. That resource denial is clearly strong when paired with something else to support it. Winds. It's kind of funny. The ice wind gives you this like unlimited resource, and then the ice portion takes away your opponent's resources. Yeah. The ice lightning, the ice denies your resources, and then the lightning gives you the aggression to like punish them for it, so that, hey, while you're down, I'm going to keep kicking you while you're down, kind of thing.
Yeah, and we've paired Ice Lightning in particular, we paired it with an element that is really good at dulling things. Yes. Right? So now that 3-drop Vincent really doesn't feel too bad, because you can control the dull in some scenarios. Yeah. On top of that, and when you're playing 2-3 bodies and stuff like that. Plus, oh my god, that Hasty Lightning, you get to 5 backups with that, and sure, just dull 5 forwards. Oh, cool. And I had frozen them all too. Yeah, I mean, that when you pair it, it can be very strong. Yeah. And Ice Lightning is my favorite personal pet deck right now. Ironically, I don't run it competitively because I think it has some serious weaknesses in the current meta, but that's my pet deck since I can't play mono lightning.
I don't know if anyone else still likes this card. I never really hear anyone else talking about it, but to me, like, I honestly think one of the best ice summons is still Glacia Labialis from Opus 5 because it has so many modes on it. Like, and that's not good. If I shouldn't be looking at an Opus 5 summon and being like, should I consider using this? It's also one of the only summons that lets you discard on a summon, which is nice.
Yeah, but then you walk into some things with that. I'm not a fan of Glaciella anymore. I haven't been for a while. I don't think the card feels particularly good to play in most scenarios. Also, I think some of that might have to do with the fact that it's worded slightly differently than the 3-drop Ramu and Lightning.
Yeah.
Where Ramu was later ruled that you can hit both of those choose ones on the same thing.
Yeah.
But Glaciella is worded differently on the choose clause, so you can't do the same thing. Also, I think there's just so much mitigation now for dulling or for dealing a dull damage that it always feels like, should I just pay 3 and say discard 1 so this can't fizzle? Or should I take a chance and try and pop that dull 7k and get you to discard? Oh, wait, you activated it. Now I've spent 3 CP and I got nothing. So Glaciella just does not feel great for me anymore.
I feel ya. Okay, so we know it's defined as it does well as support, just like fire. Obviously, you mentioned some freeze changes. Is there anything else about ice mechanically or better cards? One thing I would like to see is, I think it's dying for backup searchers, similar to the Sarah, because it has several cards, Kefka backup, Crystal Exarch, Camlanot, that all want you to have ice backups. They all require you to have a lot of ice backups to get their effects, but there's no like backup engine for it. So I'm always perplexed by those.
The backup engines it has are better at supporting other elements than actually supporting itself.
Yeah. But because again, I think there's cool ideas, and I think they've tried to put cool ideas in the mono portion of it, but I just don't think they support it with anything. Like, you got to give me a backup searcher if you want me to use these cards that require backups. What about you?
And what's weird is like the backup searchers we do have in ice that could get you ice backups are generally on forward bodies.
Yeah.
Right? Like playing Emmett Selk and paying to just go get one and play it to the field and stuff like that. Yeah, you're right. It's not a friend of mine, or the Devin, the guy who was playing in the top 8, and we were talking, I love Ice Lightning, and here we go, we're gonna have a top 8 match. And he said, well, if it's your favorite deck, why don't you run it at these tournaments? And I said, because the inconsistency of getting those backups sometimes. Yeah, I have Vincent that's gonna go get Kate Sith. Maybe you're running what is it, Restrictor, to go get Nero, and it has a couple of engines there, but if you don't see pieces of those engines, it feels really bad. As a mono element, 100%. I'd like to have decent playable ice backups that can get me another ice backup.
That would be huge. All right, should we move on to our next element?
Sure.
All right.
It's getting windy in here.
It is. Oh, so now we're going to talk about my favorite element, which everybody knows how much I love this one, and it's wind.
You love it.
Whoosh, blow me away, baby. Blow us all away.
I remember one of our Octagon matches. We were just screwing around on stream, I think, on ReadyCheck, and I was like, I know what I'm going to play. And you put out a forward on like turn 2, and I had one backup, and I typhoned it anyway, just to make you angry. I ended up losing the game because I totally out-resourced myself there to do it. But
fast forward 10 years, and I'm telling a kid, and that's why I quit playing Final Fantasy. So
yeah, wind, not one of my favorites either.
Right?
I do like wind ice ever since Barley was printed.
Yeah,
but I don't. It's just not my play style to sit there and play solitaire and count casts.
Yeah.
I was never a big storm person in Magic the Gathering. The Barley Lock Storm does interest me, and I have played that competitively a bit. But wind by itself, not for me, but you can't deny how strong that is.
Well, so obviously mono wind needs no introduction if you've been playing this game any amount of time. However, there has been a surprising amount of people being like, oh, it's not good, it's bad right now. But And I just can't subscribe to that theory, but I want to hear what you think. Tell me about Mono Wind and Opus 19.
I actually think, and I know this may be unpopular for some people. I know people hate on the Cat 13 deck sometimes. I'm very thankful for the Cat 13 deck right now. That is the only reason, in my estimation, and people that are better than me, Okimotos of the world, they may have a different take on this, and they're probably right. They're better than I am. But my take on it is, if we did not have the Cat 13 deck, I think a lot of these competitive tournaments would be stacked with a lot more mono wind and wind ice in the top 8s and the top 16s than you're seeing now.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think it's gone. I still think it is very strong, even as a mono element, but it's a scary run right now.
Yeah.
Because it has almost no immediate answer for its biggest threat, which is a hyper aggressive deck or a Cat 13 deck.
Yeah.
As soon as it gets a decent, not even a great, as soon as it gets a decent answer to that, it's going to be right back on the top again. It's going to be. It's not that the deck is horrid. It's just it's not the best deck like it has been for so long. And so people that play that style feel like it's not good right now. I can't win with it right now the way I did to the tune of an 80% win rate a set ago, 2 sets ago, 3 sets ago. It is by far, in my mind, top 2 mono decks right now. I would probably still put it at number 1 above Water if Cat 13 didn't exist. Because Cat 13 exists, I'm going to put Water a little bit ahead of it as the ultimate mono deck right now.
Well said. Very thoughtful analysis. And I don't know well, just because some people have
on my ass. I just made all of that up. No, I'm just kidding.
but some people have dismissed it as it's not good. But I think you're 100% like, if it weren't for 13, I still think it would be destroying everything. And I've still seen if that
and it does well.
Yeah, if it lives 3 turns, it's still gonna just outclass you in every other way. Like, it's just, will it live those? And we've still seen, in spite of that, Icewind, which I know isn't mono wind, but is a support variant that has won tournaments in spite of 13.
Yeah, and when we say Icewind, if you look at a competitive Icewind deck, we're talking about a 95% wind deck.
Exactly. Wind featuring ice cubes.
Right. Wind with a little chill in the air.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Oh my goodness. So really great breakdown of mono wind. Obviously support, we mentioned Icewind. Water Wind used to be huge in the day, but I feel like it's not really relevant right now, even though you've kind of got like the Guardians package. Lightning Wind.
Do see.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, you see Wind Lightning a little bit, particularly if somebody's doing like a Ninjas package, right? Capitalizing on Yuffie, but not just Yuffie, running the other ninjas in the background to supplement some things there. So I have seen that at competitive play. I mean, obviously, a friend of ours, Amethyst, big Ninjas deck player. That was her variant. The last time I saw her was Wind Lightning. Wind Earth is one that just kind of disappeared, didn't it? Like that just, I haven't seen a decent Wind Earth deck. I think like the one you could argue maybe is the Retainers deck.
But that just never really seemed to take off in the way some of the other like tribals or jobs have.
Yeah, and outside of Retainers, I can't even remember like a Wind Earth build, and I'm probably overlooking something, but off the top of my head, I got nothing for you. And then Wind Ice is like a little splash of ice, and Wind Fire can do some nifty things because there's always the threat of giving dangerous cards like Null Haste.
Yeah.
So there's some nifty things you could do there, but again, you fall into that. This, when it wins, is going to win big, but it's probably going to lose at about a 60% rate.
Yeah, very fair. Can't believe these words are going to come out of my mouth, but is there anything Wind needs?
Maybe reined in a little.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Evray, when I saw Evray spoiled, I was just like, why? What?
Yeah.
Like, what is this craziness.
I think
You
I
know,
just
you already
sighed. I
have a
was like,
Tomos, you already have a Althea and all this. There's so many cards that people argue about being banned. Althea always comes up in that conversation. When I saw Evray, I was like, oh, wow. Okay. That's a 3K Barley ping just for saying Evray's ability.
Yeah.
Just like I gotta
are you
do
going to pay the
nothing.
cost? Oh, I did.
Right.
It was nothing.
And by the way, it's immediately refundable if you want it to be. Like, it literally costs you the logistical 2 CP that the card is worth for discarding. That's all you lose by playing it. But there is the argument that if Wind can't do its 5 to 7 casts, then Wind doesn't have an identity right now. Right? If you look at the current meta, I think when you see Wind, 99 times out of 100, it's a Storm variant.
Yeah.
Maybe it has Ice, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's straight Wind and it's going the Luso route. Occasionally somebody will, like, I know you were goofy and messing with a Yuffie deck for a while.
Yeah.
Occasionally you'll see those, but maybe Wind can do its identity a little more than it should be able to. But I would hesitate to pull it back too far, because then I don't know if Wind has a real identity if you take mass activation and storm capabilities off of Wind.
Yeah.
Well, like what could it do if I told you, hey, we're going to take some cards away, so realistically this deck Wind can only get 3 casts per turn like a normal average deck.
Yeah.
What does Wind become to you then? What Wind deck are you building?
Yeah, that's a fair point. But you know what? I'd like to see that. I would like to find that out. Like, maybe the strength of cards like Bismarck and Yuffie could carry it still because they're such strong cards. But maybe not. Maybe it would lose what it needs to, like, stay relevant. For me, and I've said this so many times, and I'll just repeat it, like, it's the only effect or mechanic in the game that doesn't have any counter. There's cards that shut off the protection so fire can burn them. There's cards that prevent you from bouncing them back to hand against water. The fact that we have nothing, not a single card, not even a bad one, that just says, hey, you limit the casting, or you just can't do it outside, or just something. Like, just give me something. Just even if it's a bad ice backup that they can break immediately, at least I'll have that one little thing. Like, just give me something.
Well, I think they look at it and they say it doesn't have an effective early game board clear. Like, you can certainly set up Luso plays for board clear. That's going to take a few turns. You can certainly set up Barley as board clears. That's going to take a few turns. That's why it falls prey to the 13 deck quite a lot, right? There is no Shantoto. There is no Hecatoncher. There is no, hell, even Fire has Susano, right? Mm-hmm. Like, in a pinch, you could top deck and play a Susano in a Fire deck. And I think maybe, that's what they're looking at there. It's like, okay, this deck or this element, this is its play.
Yeah.
It wants to get a bunch of casts. It wants to draw a lot of free cards, and it wants to get benefits if it's able to do that. And if it's not able to do that because your opponent stopped it, it doesn't have an effective answer to the blow back,
right?
The swing back. I would argue that I don't think Wind is in the broken state that some people think. Are there cards that should be thought about and reviewed? Sure. Mm-hmm. Sure. Althea is a 0 commitment card, and that kind of violates the whole rules of the game to me in my head. But that said, I don't know how far I'd scale it back. I think you can have a Tomos. You shouldn't have Evray, is kind of like where I land. That type of, let's be a little, we don't want to strip it of its identity, because that is its identity.
And I agree. And I've always, as much as I hate Wind, I've always advocated, like, I want it to be strong. I think it should be the dominant setup deck. It should be the deck that, if I get set up, nothing else will beat me, because you should have that. Because what's the point of playing a late game setup deck if you can still lose to everything else by the time you get there?
Right.
My concern was, at least in the past several opuses, it used to, way back when you started, okay, but it takes 10, 11, 12 turns to get there. Whereas some games on turn 3, I've seen a Wind Ice deck, a Tomos, Sid Hayes, Lock, and it's not like they had to go all in for it. They still have 3 cards in hand. They've taken your whole board out, and you're like, well, but it's still aggro time, right? Nope, it's late. Yeah. So that for me is
we're
my
not
big
in
thing,
aggro
like,
land anymore.
Be the ultimate late game deck. I have no issue, but can we push that back a little bit? Can that not be as early as it has been? That would make me very happy.
Yeah, Icewind was top 8 in Ontario or in Ottawa.
Did it win that one?
Wind Ice is, Tony ended up winning the whole thing. on a wind ice deck. And I was on Earth Ice at the time, and it was like basically that's like an unwinnable matchup. Just even before we shuffle and deal in most cases. So yeah, it doesn't feel great. And Sid Hayes, oh God, what is that card?
What is that card? Well, before you get blown away, Michael, I got to bring you back down to earth with one of my favorite elements, and this one will be very interesting to talk about because I think a lot of these are obvious, and maybe this one isn't as obvious, or maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah.
So earth. Mono Earth. What is? I'm going to paraphrase Morpheus from The Matrix. What is Mono Earth? How do you define Mono Earth? If dirt is something you can touch and feel, then it's nothing more than an illusion caused by The Matrix. Mono Earth doesn't exist. What does it look like?
It does not. It absolutely does not. And even when it does, it's really weird looking, right? Like for a while it was monks. And yeah, you teched in a little bit of water just so you could, reasonably and realistically play Sophie in a pinch if you had to, or play Sarah Mobius in a pinch if you had to. But for the most part, that was monks. Then that kind of, when Sophie went away, the monks deck got substantially worse because it wasn't getting free damage, right? And that's kind of what Earth does in its best mono forms. It's big ass bodies, most of the time having Brave. And so it's a deck that is not afraid to get real big up front and swing because it's still going to be able to block.
Yeah.
And then it has the board clears to give it the couple of turns that it's going to need to get some backups, because generally those forwards are a little more on the expensive side in today's meta, 4 or 5 and sometimes 6 CP.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of been its identity outside of monks. When was the last time you saw somebody play a mono Earth deck? Not even in a competitive environment, Travis.
Opus.
I can't.
Yeah, I don't know.
Think
13 monks. That was when monks was at its heyday. It was 13.
Yeah,
with the Sophie.
Yeah. Now there are cards that are nice to tech. We're seeing Galef teched a lot. Galef was one of my favorite legends, and locals told me I was silly and that was goofy, and I was like, "That's a good card. You watch."
Yeah.
And we're seeing it teched against certain things, and Sildra certainly enables it to a certain degree. But outside of that, it's even in like Earth Ice. Think of the Earth Ice, the Earth cards you're running in there. In my build, it was Rydia. Why? Because it can search a backup that's the other color, and it grabs you a summon, so it's basically a 1 CP backup. That's cool. Tyro, mainly because the damn dude X bursts anymore. Yeah. In most games, in my opinion, he's a little too slow to play in most games with the Earth Ice deck, but he X bursts, and if you have to play him, you can. Shantoto for your board clear, Kusith to bring some stuff back, Hecaton for some board clear action, and then on the forward side of the board, hold on, I can't even tell you the Earth ones. I have the Ice Earth forwards,
right?
The cross element ones, Lark and White
Prish,
Tiger, and Prish. But by itself, I don't even know if there's a Robel, Akbel, and Galef. 3 cards total, 2 Robel, 1 Galef in my last Earth Ice build.
And it's hard to consider Robel he's not really a generic Earth card because, of course, he requires crystals. Galoof is more because, he just requires a break zone, which every game's going to have. But
on the support side of things, though, it probably has one of the strongest array of summons out of all the elements.
Right? Isn't that crazy how much it
Which makes it just drop into any element you want it to be in.
And it's the known color fixer, too.
Yep. Yeah, it's the easiest color fixer. Out there, that's for sure. But like Kusith, that's great in any deck. Get some forwards or backups back. Hecaton for your board cleared. That's great in the current meta. Mist Dragon, break zone's really important in the current meta. Sometimes I even tech in the 3-drop Hecaton because backups are a lot more expensive now. And then Fenrir as well, right? Who was useless for the longest time.
Yeah.
And then Sophie kind of made it see some use, and then Sophie was limited, so Fenrir went away. Now, every deck is running 4, 5, and sometimes 6 cost backups, and Fenrir feels really good. The summons package and the ability to board clear and color fix are what make it great supporting elements for pretty much any color.
Yeah.
But by itself, no. I don't even see it in friendlies. let alone competitive environment.
That's fair. Do you think it kind of lacks an identity as a mono? Like, obviously, we associate the keyword brave with it, and in the past I would say you associated big bodies, but I don't think that's true anymore. I think so much stuff has gotten big over the spectrum of elements that, like, I don't think a 9K it has to be an Earth card. Well, that could be any element now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, brave is kind of its thing, right? That's where it's home.
Yeah.
Is I would agree with you on big bodies. Like 8 and 9K consistently isn't big anymore.
Yeah.
There was a day when 7 and 8 was the norm, and 8 and 9 were the big boys.
Yeah.
And now there's an awful lot of big boys and girls out there at 8 and 9.
Yeah.
And a couple of 10s now. One that's causing a lot of consternation for people.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Mist Dragon, because I have always rated that. I mean, the first time I saw it in Opus 9, I thought, you lose your entire break zone and they draw? That seems absurd. And yet,
and by the way, if you don't care about their break zone, it cancels a summon of cost 5 or less.
Or protects. I've seen a lot of people using it to protect Warrior of Light too. Just like, you were going to kill him with some damage. Yeah, no, he's alive. And what's funny though is I still hear competitive players say that's not a good summon. It's just not it, and which is just kind of crazy to me. I was like, maybe the rate isn't good, or I don't know what about it they don't think isn't good, but it's the only thing that, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the only card currently that gets rid of your entire break zone at instant speed. Nothing else does that.
Yeah, so everything else has to be kind of tricked in, right?
Yeah.
Like Baron Guardsman, I know it's not the entire break zone, but playing Baron Guardsman off of like a backup at instant speed, getting him out of your break zone since he's a standard unit, and playing him to the field, that can get rid of a type. Like you choose forward and get rid of those.
X-Death can get rid of characters, but
X-Death gets rid of characters. And then Edward backup, White Mage backup, stuff like that can get rid of select cards. Kadaj gets rid of select cards, but none of those are instant speed.
Yeah.
They're all action abilities or enter the field effects, which can, obviously be responded to pretty quickly, or even downright anticipated. Where when you see Earth, you I feel like, what was the card in Lightning? Behemoth K. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Anytime you see somebody run Lightning to a degree, like there's a fair amount of Lightning cards in there, you always have to worry about one copy of stupid Behemoth K being in that deck.
Yeah.
Right? Anytime you see Earth on the other side of the field, I could be running 0 Mist Dragons, but you're still worried about it.
Yep.
To me, that's the mark of a good card.
Yeah. Same with Shantoto. If I see if you're playing predominantly Ice and Lightning, and then suddenly I see an Earth card, suddenly I'm like, am I going to get Totoed at some point? Like I have to suddenly worry about this board wipe.
Yeah.
So
like if Fire with a Mott does the same thing.
Yeah,
like you might have a splash of fire in a deck, but now that I've seen one fire card discarded, I constantly have to like pace and make sure I see things because am I going to get a modded? And I think that's kind of my personal mark for a good card.
Yeah.
Or one that is worth playing still in the current meta. Am I worried about it being played in the current meta? And if I am, it probably, in my mind, has a place in the current meta.
Yeah. So Earth, clearly an incredible support element, and it has a lot of relevant stuff in the meta with Earth Water, Earth Ice. You don't see as much Avalanche, but Earth Fire, I feel like, is always just hanging around and may just show up one day.
Yeah, you're seeing that a lot more right now in Cloud Pod, right? Earth Wind. Yeah, an Earth Wind Cloud Pod. Sometimes it's running a little bit of fire for the Tifa and stuff, but yeah, mostly Avalanche Cloud Pod.
Yeah. So mechanically, is there anything you think Earth could use added to it? Obviously, it's got Brave. Recursion is another big theme. It's pretty diverse. It's got, color support. Anything you want to see added to it, taken away?
I don't... honestly, looking at Earth by itself, I don't think it has much of its own identity at all right now. Because we've seen Brave kind of extracted to other places.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's still mostly prevalent in Earth, but it's been extracted to other places now too. Much like the next element we're going to talk about, having its identity kind of extracted to other places. And I don't necessarily know if it needs a mono identity. I think that Hobby Japan and Square are probably pretty happy with that being hey, if you want to run a mono thing, cool. We're going to print monks in the future. But we view Earth as a little more of pair it with something and you're going to have something good.
Yeah. That's fair.
And that's okay, I think. I don't think every
absolutely.
color always needs to be mono viable at every single moment. Would it be nice and interesting? Yeah. Would it be possible to balance? Probably not. Like, it just probably wouldn't be.
Yeah.
And I think they're kind of happy with that. And I am too. If you're a mono Earth fan, I'm sorry to say that, but I don't think there's a lot of you out there.
There's a monk watching this video right now. Just a tear strolled down his face.
Clicking dislike on it right now.
No, that's very fair. Well, okay, that was a very grounded explanation.
He did it again.
I did the thing. So,
he said the thing.
Okay, so don't be too shocked by this, but we're going to talk about your next.
Damn it. I was going to use shock.
I need bells and whistles. Woo, 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 woo. Yeah, I need like a button every time a bad pun goes off. I know this is your favorite element. It's lightning.
Is.
I'll set the stage a bit. For mono lightning, I don't know, for those of you who haven't been playing the game super long, there was a time this was a feared element. You had things like Alcid, Onion Knight, Alua, even...
Not the Alcid you know of today.
Not the Alcid, but there's an old Opus 2 Alcid, Onion Knight that is probably terrible now, but back then was a killer combo. You have Alua Shoal, which was one of the craziest specials, still probably arguably one of the best single specials looked at in isolation. And then maybe around Opus 9, 10, especially 11... disappeared. Michael, what happened?
Yeah. I don't know. They just decided they hated it. I used to run mono lightning competitively, and I always thought, and I still do, but not for lightning anymore. If I was ever going to go to a tournament that happened right after a set release, right? So set releases, the first week, it's technically not legal for locals. The second week, it's not legal for organized play. And then after that, it is legal across the board for all events, right?
Yeah.
Or is it the other way? I don't remember. Yeah, 1 week for locals, 2 for official events.
Yeah.
If I ever had a tournament that fell just on the other side of that, hey, the new set is legal, mono lightning was where I went. Right? Because it was just always safe.
Yeah.
It was going to be competitive. Even if you weren't running any of the new cards, the meta hadn't been sorted out yet over a new set. And so I would always go to those events running mono lightning or mono water because they were safe, they were consistent, they were strong, even if you didn't tech in new cards at a brand new tournament where nobody knew what the hell the meta was yet.
Yeah.
That will never happen right now. Ever. Like, there is just not a realistic world where I take a mono lightning deck to a competitive environment, even at the end of a meta.
Yeah.
It's just gone. And I don't know why. Maybe it's kind of like what I just said about Earth, right? Where, hey, we can't really give this too much of an identity of its own along these dull lines, along these hasty lines, because fire and lightning are very similar in those kind of respects.
Yeah.
And we don't want to give all of those to one color and not the other because then it loses the night. Maybe lightning's just a better support element. And it can be. There's a couple of decks that lightning's in. But remember when 6-drop Adia, like how strong that card was?
Oh, yeah.
And you just break the backup, drag the forward to the field, and immediately break something. I mean, that was insanely strong. And now I just feel like if you're not running Ice Lightning, you probably aren't running lightning.
Yeah.
And that feels bad to me. Maybe ninjas aside, but that just feels really bad to me. I view it a lot like fire. There are really cool little packages of cool lightning cards. Man in Black is one of the best design cards they've had in a while. Alcid and stuff like that can be very, very fun. But if you're running Alcid, then you're running Zoromas, then you're running Lightning, then you're running Sephiroth. And boom, I have just built 12 cards out of your 50-card deck right away.
Yeah.
Like, you run them in little packages. Egg's Death, you can get a little bit fun in there. Behemoth K is like that one of that you always got to look out for. There's all these cute little packages, but they're always meant to be used somewhere else, not in a mono build. And so I kind of put it in the same vein as fire, but I actually put it a little bit below fire because I think if you said, Mike, you have to run a mono deck this weekend at a store championship and it has to be fire or lightning, pick one, I would pick fire.
I would too. And so thinking on the mono aspect, it does share keywords or effects with other elements. It used to really specialize in power reduction. It doesn't really do that anymore, but it did always share that with water. Not a lot of their modern cards do that as much. Some of them do.
Yeah, some of like the old Ramus and stuff
Yeah.
were like 7k power loss, 8k power loss on an expert.
Cyclops
that
with
type of stuff.
-3 to the board.
Cyclops, stuff like that. They got out of that real quick, didn't
Yeah.
they? They kind of just like shifted that all to water and called it a day.
Yeah, there's a few like the Ishtola legend from a few sets ago, but again, for the most part, it doesn't. It does ping, which fire does, haste, which fire does, dull, which ice does. But I think one of the most unique things to it is what I always just call straight break, right? Just choose a forward, break it. So when I think about its mechanics, I don't think it's lacking for bad effects. Like those are all good effects. So like, is it just, are they too expensive? Does it not have a way to get value back? Is it just the card qualities? Because in those old days, Lightning could steal so many games. Games you thought, all right, I got this guy. And then out of nowhere, my entire field's dull and he hasted his board. Now I'm just dead.
Right.
Like, but that just doesn't happen anymore. Like, I don't know. Is it just straight card value? Is that they've printed so many tribal legends with Black Waltz 3 and Ishtola and Kingsglaive Nyx? I don't know. Do you have
two other packages that, in the context of looking at good cards, Kingsglaives can be a lot of fun and the Black Waltzes can be a lot of fun, but they are always 100% designed with the intent of being worked with another color, right? Al Cid is purposely designed. He's an Ice Lightning card, so he was purposely designed to be working with another element. The Kingsglaives, while predominantly lightning, are really also meant to be partnered into Earth. So you can take advantage of the big boy cat 15 characters, the Gladioli and stuff like that as well as doing Kingsglaive-y stuff. It's just like even the card design itself says, don't play me by myself, play me with this other color. Yeah. And that's has to be by design. I think there was a period of time where Lightning actually, as it's getting the shaft now, but that's just maybe my own bias. But Lightning was very limiting for a while. Like, you had these
the player
just like
or as like going against it.
No, as the player.
Okay.
Because when you were looking at a selection of cards, there were always, and this still happens. The latest set had one or two, where there was just like absurd criteria.
Yeah.
Like, why can wind shove something back into your deck in the 5th spot for 3 CP, but for me to spend 4 CP and try to break something, I have to make sure it's active, it's raining outside, it's a full moon, and tomorrow's a Saturday. Like, why are there all these requirements on this stupid Lightning card?
Yeah.
Now they've done
say
that.
The Ramo
less
a perfect
and less.
example that this new Ramo we got, and it's the only one with a restriction on it. It's got to be 3 or less.
Yep. Everything else, no problem. 4-drop Alexander and Wind, totally fair.
Yeah.
Totally fair. This Ramu, no. You want to break Iridia? Cool. Have a good day. You want to break a Warrior of Light? Yeah, get wrecked. Yeah. No, that's not gonna happen. So I just feel like it's and these do go in cycles. Right, fire was so weak, was so strong, and then so weak, and then so strong, and now it's kind of like a lower end right now. So I have faith that it'll come back, but I just don't think, holistically looking at the game, that Hobby Japan and Square is particularly interested in designing with mono in mind. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Does it feel bad if you want to run a mono deck that isn't wind? Maybe it does. But I actually think, at least in my opinion, that the game is more versatile and more interesting to play when you have to take a turn or two to figure out exactly what your opponent is playing in some cases. Yeah. Rather than see a lightning backup, see another lightning backup, and say, okay, I'm on mono lightning. These are the 4 cards I'm afraid of. Let's play.
Sid Previa into Louis Suave and Elfin or whatever.
Oh, those were the days,
right?
Bro.
Those were the days. So, obviously, it does support things like Ice Lightning very well. Earth Lightning has never quite reached the point I've wanted it to. But again, like the kind of like Ryan Chen list he won Pennsylvania with. The Black, like that one was pretty neat. Water Lightning still has some kind of punch and pizzazz. So, and again, I mentioned, I think mechanically it has good effects. What would it need? Does it just need straight better cards? Like, or does it need
Yeah.
value? It doesn't feel like it ever draws anything back to you, and I don't know if it's supposed to, but...
Yeah, well, I think it's another one that suffers from the backups that search their own backups, right? Because we kind of go with ice and we look in lightning and we see restrictor, which is typically going to go grab an ice backup, right? It can grab a forward too, but most of the time it's going to grab,
or
a Nero.
The Kali Cheval is going to go grab one of the other
right,
backups.
One of the other cadet backups, or Vincent's going to go grab Kate's. Oh, not Vincent.
Reeve, yeah.
Reeve, thank you. Reeve is going to go grab Kate Sith. Like it doesn't. And for a while, Sid Previa was the engine, right? But even then, it wasn't even an engine.
Yeah.
You had to have the
you had to
drop
hope you
backup
started
in your hand already, discard it to pay for Sid, and then drag it onto the field. So it was a cute way to get 2 backups that really became too slow real fast.
Yeah.
But so it kind of lacks a decent setup. So kind of suffers from the same thing that Ice suffers from in that regards, in my opinion. And then on the forward count, the forwards just aren't designed to work together with other lightning cards.
Yeah.
In my mind, they just aren't. The summons can be, like, you can tech some summons. Ixion's a great summon, fantastic in the current meta. But like you said, Black Waltz 3, that is not meant to be played in a mono lightning deck. It just isn't. Now, do you run all of them or 2 of them? That's personal flavor, but you certainly don't run just Black Waltz 3 and try and cram him into a deck full of lightning VVs and other crappy Black Waltzes that are sitting in lightning. That's just not the deck you're typically going to build.
Yeah.
Egg's Death, great card, but doesn't play well or particularly strong with other lightning forwards. You really want other things out on the board. Man in Black, tremendous card, but he doesn't care what the hell else you have on board.
Yeah.
Like he just does his own thing, baby. Get some summons and stop you from swinging or blocking. Let's do this. I'm 9K. Come at me, bro. Oh, there's a Cindy out here too. Cool.
Kind of the same thing with Behemoth King. Like, he's such a cool card, but he doesn't have any like support with him. He's like, I just run in and hit them.
Yeah. There's no, the anthems don't see play anymore, so it's not even like you can really maybe you see Duke Larg sometimes in ice just to get Alcids and stuff like that out of a Mott range. But it's just, it used to be Dull was its identity, right? Dull and haste, and then Fire kind of started encroaching on the haste a little more, and now has, in my mind, become the hasty element, although Lightning can do it a little bit. And Dull doesn't feel good in a world where Dull Freeze exists to the prevalence that it does. And so it kind of like got stripped of its own identity, and now it's this multi-element tool, which isn't a bad thing, but
I wonder too, I'll posit this for you and anyone who would watch this and wants to comment in the chat. I wonder if Dull as a mechanic too has been hurt by all these action abilities like Une or Warrior of Light that say, okay, well, on the stack, are you dulling me? I'm just going to do it anyway and get this effect off. So it's like, it didn't really accomplish the thing I wanted it to accomplish. I don't know. Maybe I'm making that up, but
well, I think if you look at it through that lens, though, I think the problem becomes a little more clear, right? The problem becomes that Lightning in the old days was built to deal damage. Dull your guy, swing over it.
Yeah.
Dull your dude, swing over it. Do damage, do it fast, kill you.
Yeah.
That's not the game anymore. Besides running the Cat 13 deck, right, which is kind of that same mindset.
Yeah.
There aren't many other decks that are specifically designed to, I want to sneak in damage.
Yeah.
I want to sneak in damage. This is a game of removal at this point in the meta. Whether you like that or not, that's the reality of the game. Dull ain't enough. Removal, bounce, break, send to break zone, RFG, get off the field is the name of the game. And Lightning's not good at that game.
Fantastic. Oh, I feel like I'm in the choir. Just preach, brother, preach. No, you're right. Like, it has moved away from that. So that's huge. Yeah, that's huge. That is huge. Wow. Well said, Michael. Very well said.
Hey, thank you.
You did your favorite element, a strong service. But now, of course, I got to wipe down, sponge my head, because we are moving on to an element.
I mean, that was a rather electrifying conversation.
Hi-oh!
Hey, oh, he did it. He did
Woo,
it.
woo, woo. No one should be surprised by this next one. It's water. Mono water especially was pretty relevant back in like the Opus 8, 5 through 8 days, Cloud of Darkness.
Strong as hell.
I know.
Yeah.
I love Cloud of Darkness. And you had the Layla Viking combo.
Yeah.
But we've traded all that in for a whole new set of mono water toys. Everyone knows mono water is great, so it'll be interested to see what you say about this. Mono water, tell me about it.
Well, I mean, I said when we talked about wind, I said I probably only put it second to mono water, and that's very meta dependent. Like there could be, if Sildra became banned tomorrow, mono wind I think becomes the stronger mono element again. But it's a coin toss between those two. Water is also, like I said, the other deck that I would take to a tournament right after a set dropped if the meta was undecided.
Mm-hmm.
And for the last probably 4 sets prior to 2 sets ago, it fell off the face of the planet.
Yeah.
Like it just disappeared. And then came back with a vengeance and is doing very, very well now. And it's not surprising, but it's kind of taken over that power loss perspective. Ash, also X-bursting. Why the hell do you X-burst? That is ridiculous. Anyway, why do I get to pay 1 for you, take something out, and you X-burst? This is ridiculous. Hiding behind the monsters, that's always been a favorite deck of mine, particularly ice water monsters. Yeah. And kind of sneaking around and doing things with the monsters. I love mono water as a whole. Absolutely, I would take this to a tournament right now. And that's even before Okamoto won a cup with it, you know, and second place was a mono water deck too. Even before that, it is one that I would consider taking to a cup. It's versatile. It has answers to just about everything in the current meta. Whether it's taking Lightning's ability for 1 CP and getting a card for your troubles, and dodging that stuff, whether it's removal for things that can't take damage by doing power loss, whether it's avoiding board clears with the monsters, whether it's bouncing things. Lena Leviathan is just ridiculous. It's got break zone fun to do. It's got a strong complement of summons, and as if Sarah into Princess Sarah wasn't immediately backup ready enough, even if you were just going to make Princess Sarah water, like in a Leo deck or something like that, or in a mono water deck, it sets you up with 2 sweet backups. You got Sildra. Like, what do you want? It says, put me in your break zone and go get your 2 favorite cards at this exact moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is no better summon in the game than that right now. I need more backups. My mulligan sucked. Sildra. I need some forwards that are going to bounce because I can't break these things that are out here. Sildra. Like, you can't get better than that. Like it or not, think Sildra should be banned or not, it's really not a big brain play for me to say that mono water is certainly viable and is the best mono element out there right now.
You mentioned the summons specifically, and I was kind of just thinking in my head right now, if you were to compare those to the ice summons, like, all the ice summons, it's got to be dull. It's got to da-da-da. But look at the diversity of the... So Sildra, like you said, get anything in your deck. 1 CP Kukulane the Impure, which tells a 13 deck, actually, you don't have a lightning this turn.
Yeah.
It doesn't do it. And Porum, too, it has like the ability to just say, actually, whatever you have that's dangerous doesn't work. It has an auto ability cancel in that Leviathan. It has a return to hand, no, you can't play it. Like, it summons.
Oh, and by the way, in a typical mono
things.
water build, these are all cheaper by 1.
Yes. Thanks to Lady Yuna.
like, these are all cheaper by 1. And a fair few of them X-burst.
Yeah.
6-drop Leviathan
would never be played if you always had to
Never.
cast it. Yeah.
No, if you had to cast that, would every time it would never be played. But X-burst, grab 1, bounce 1, feels good.
Pretty good.
I feel real good at this game right now when that stuff happens.
So you brought up Our Lady of Faith, Yuna. I've often heard people say they purposely design water summons with Yuna in mind. However, we've never gotten any official confirmation from the dev team on that. Do you agree with that? So you think they made Sildra specifically 4 because they're like, well, with Yuna it would be 3?
Yeah, it always costs, if you only have 1 backup out, it costs 1 or 2 backups out. It still costs a discard.
Yeah.
And I think that you will never convince me. And I said this a long time ago. We were talking about this behind the scenes weeks ago too, I think. I had done a stream a long time ago where I was talking about banned cards or cards that should be banned at the time, or that should have at least eyes placed on them. And I'm talking like Opus 6, Opus 7, Opus 8 era. This is like way long ago. And I brought up 2-drop Yuna, not because I think it breaks the game. I don't think it's like an Althea or a Sildra or violates the tenets of what the game's meant to be. I think it severely limits the design space of the game. I think it's way too limiting on the design space. Every water summon you make, you have to take into account that card exists. Every single one, until the end of time, or until you add in a rotation and she rotates out, until you ban her. Every single thing. And when you compare it to other summons, Yuna isn't a benefit anymore. Back in the day, you remember this, it felt like a benefit to have Yuna out. Now it's a requirement because the summons feel, I don't want to pay 4 for that, but I would pay 3 for that. I don't want to pay 6 for that, but I would pay 5 for that. I don't want to pay 3, but I definitely would pay 2. And it doesn't feel like you're getting something extra out of that discount. It feels like you're on curve with playing summons in other colors.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong, and that's just me. I don't feel like Yuna's a cool thing. Look at this cool thing I can do for 1 cheaper than you can do it. I feel like I have to play Yuna so I can do this cool thing at the same cost curve that you can in your deck.
Yeah.
And to me, that's when it's time to say, that's not good design space anymore. Let's bring this back in line. We'll make the summons cheaper by 1 inherently, and now we don't have to worry about Yuna anymore.
Touching on Sildra, because it's the same idea, right? Like, that card will never get worse unless they stop printing water and category 5 cards, which
anything that searches will only ever get better.
It'll only ever get better. So, when people talk about like banning it, my kind of opinion too is like, but if you don't ban it now, like, why ever ban it? Because again, it's already getting crazy busted cards. It'll continue to get crazy busted cards. Like, and maybe they like that consistency. Maybe they want to see a card that helps you make a deck consistently. But yeah, that's kind of my thing, is like, it's only going to get stronger. So if you don't ban it now, is there ever a reason to ban it? Because it's only going to keep just getting more and more things.
Yes. Honestly, I mean, we heard that Hobby Japan and Square were keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, it was on the
watch
list.
It was on the watch list. One of those cards that was on the watch list. Honestly, I do feel bad for Mono Water, because I think if Sildra does get banned, then Mono Water takes a significant dive.
Nice.
In how strong it is, and maybe even borderline becomes unplayable in a competitive environment for a little bit. But I think it does end up getting banned at a point here. I think what happened and it's just me guessing, I don't talk to Kageyama-san every weekend or anything. They put it on the watch list. And if you think about what was going on at that time, they were still kind of at least publicly, they were trying to work out what the next competitive season would look like.
Yeah.
Obviously, in the background, those conversations had to have already been happening for a while.
Yeah.
What the season would look like, and the scheduling that goes into that type of stuff happens months and months, sometimes a year or so in advance. So I feel like that kind of got, hey, we're going to put this on the watch list. But we haven't had a real competitive season in a while to see, now that multiple sets have come out, is it really as broken as people think it might be if there was a true competitive season? So we're going to put it on a watch list, which meant there's no way in hell they're banning it before this competitive season is over. I don't think you can realistically do that. I don't think you can shut down powerful decks in the middle of a competitive season. So I think they look at it, they put it on the watch list, and they say, let's see it under real competitive environments, not people just reporting their 20-person locals saying this is broken.
Yeah.
We'll watch it this season, and we'll make a call at the end of the season. And I think the call is going to be, it goes away. Only because it kind of, like Althea, violates what I feel are core tenets. And I think Chris Matisky said something similar talking about Althea. And I definitely agree with Chris. Amazing. Shikati's one of my favorite creators,
right?
Content-wise. Do more, Shikati. Do more content.
Yeah. Come on, monkey dance.
I pay 3 and I go get 4. That seems weird. I have Yuna on board. I pay 3 CP. I go get 4 CP. Why? Rydia is 5, and I go get 4. Why is Sildra mathematically out of line like that? And with the options, to your point, just getting better and better over time, the card is easier and easier to abuse.
Yeah. Well, and
with summon recursion in water,
Yeah.
ditch Sildra, play Echidna, take Sildra back, cast Sildra, go get 2. Ouch. Feels bad if you're the opponent.
Right? Yeah, you're just sitting there taking it. With that, so in their starter decks, Steve Dolman of YYT makes this point often. I've always really liked it. In their starter decks, they still release.
Dude's a legend, by the way.
Right?
I love Steve D.
They release these starter.
Give Steve a big hug.
Right?
Love him.
Oh, hi, Steve. Hope you're watching. In these starter decks, they release them with 16 to 18 backups.
Yeah.
And again, if you said if Sildra went away, Mono Water would have to convert back to the normal 14 to 16 backups
instead of being able to do it on 8.
On 8,
poor element.
Well, and that is like you said, like Althea's like, surely that wasn't intended, because you still release starter decks with 18 backups, which at least projects that that's how you kind of see the game should be played as. And here you have a deck running 10 less of those, which means it just gets to run 10 amazing cards. So
right.
So plenty. So plenty on mono support, which arguably you could say, well, maybe it doesn't need support. We know Earth Water is obviously great. Ice Water is just, I wish that one was, I don't know if it's the multi-elements or what about that isn't working, but water is support. Yeah. Hit me with it.
Yeah, I'm not keen on it. I don't like it in Fire right now, besides splashing it. In Fire Ice Cat 6, I don't like it. Obviously there isn't an Ice Water build that I particularly enjoy at this point. Wind Water, okay, I don't even know what the hell that would look like. Earth Water, yes, but really Earth Water is kind of, hey, we're gonna run Earth and color fix ourselves to play Warrior of Light, and we're just gonna abuse the shit out of Sildra to go get our Earth Water targets.
Yeah.
Like that's the element there, which is actually what I ran at Kingston this past weekend. Was the Rydia summoner thing. Or Water Lightning. Water Lightning's always been a pet project one of mine. Like the Thancred's always fun to mess with, and getting Layla Vikings out there back in the day early, and that. I always wanted, that's kind of another monster deck I mess with. I mentioned that I do Ice Water for monsters. There's Lightning Water monsters, kind of like building off Chimera and Rampare and some oddball stuff that you can do there that I like, but isn't going to be competitive. Honestly, it is one that, on a side, I wouldn't even say is a great support element by itself. It's a good splash element.
Yeah.
Sildra enables a lot of stuff in the Earth, Water, Warrior of Light summons deck. But if you look at the breakdown of that deck, as far as its actual elements itself, the water takes up 24 cards, and keep in mind that's
a lot of dual elements. Yeah.
A lot of dual elements going on. The pure water cards, Sarah, Class 4th Moogle, Sildra, and then whatever package you prefer for your version of it in like Porums, Rosas, Vasoyas. That's it. There's more earth in that deck. There's substantial wind and fire in that deck. The water is exactly those pieces that make mono water so good. Sarah that searches Princess Sarah. Your Sildras to go get whatever. And a few extra water forwards that aren't multi-element. So yeah, it's more of a splash for me than like, hey, I'm going to take a deck that's 50-50 and half of it's water. I don't think there's a deck that I run like that right now, or would consider running.
That's so interesting. I would have guessed it would have had more as a support element, and this will kind of tie to our final point on it too about mechanically, like what you, just because for me, in any card game, usually there is one element that is the draw cards element, right? Which to me is basically
and
the
that's
most
water.
Yeah, which is to me the most single, like, useful generic effect you can have in any game, right? The more cards you draw is always a good thing. At least I don't know many games where that's like a bad thing for you, other than decking out, of course. But so I would have thought the ability to draw more cards maybe would have made it better support, but you made a good argument for, like, actually, no, it's not so great as the support right now.
Well, just look at, like, here's the one you commentated, right? Tabletop Tavern San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
Mono water, first and second.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we have water represented in third and fourth, but it's the Rydia type deck.
Yeah.
Sarah, Class 4th Moogle, Sildra, and then whatever your personal flavor of Fusoya, Rosa, and Porums may be.
Yeah.
That's it. Then when you go further down the list, Lightning, Ice Earth, Wind Lightning, Mono Water, another Soiree deck. Okamoto loves bidets. That's such a great name. But again, Sarah, Class 4th Moogle, Sildra. Sometimes people pop a Leviathan in there. It's not that half deck element. It just isn't. Realistically, looking at these, there is a core water package that works in a bunch of colors. And that core package of 6 to 12 cards goes everywhere. What element do you want to put it in? It's great. Put it in there. It's fantastic. But water as a whole, I don't think is a tremendously great support element. It's just that cluster of 12 to 14 water cards that are great support in anything, if that makes sense.
What element do you want to pair this with? Right answer.
Yeah. What'd you have in mind? It's Tuesday. Let's go with fire.
That's wow. No, really good insight. Okay, so mechanically on it, is there anything you'd like to see the element lose or gain or shift around? Obviously, it's got bounce, card draw, power reduction, things of that nature.
Yeah, so I think water as an element is in an interesting, cool spot. I like the kind of balance of draw cards, the balance of summon recursion, the interesting aspect of a lot of their summons. Honestly, what I would advocate for the most would be a counter to water that doesn't realistically exist in a meaningful way right now, and that is a little more monster hate.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a little more diverse monster hate across the elements with some of the restrictions on monster hate removed. Like Chelinka, I think, is the cleanest monster break right now, outside of Fenrir, which, you're not spending 5 unless you can get 2 effects.
Right.
Off of you're spending 5 to break a monster, unless it's the difference between, an Atomos killing you or not.
Right.
So I would, and Sin is just not realistic in a competitive environment. So I think water gets kind of a pass, right? Throw out a lot of Tomberries, throw out a lot of blue worms, meaningless monsters that are drawing you cards anyway. So it's a net 0 spend.
Immune to Shantoto.
Immune to Shantoto, immune to damage, board-wide damage. Like, they can duck everything. And I think that needs a little more pushback before that gets too out of control. We're already seeing it very strong right now. I wouldn't say it's out of control yet, but it can become out of control. So I don't think water itself needs anything. Besides, if Sildra goes away, what does water look like then? Can it still be viable backup-wise if all you have is Sarah into Princess Sarah, and you need to find another backup engine to shove in that deck with Sarah and Princess Sarah? That's where I watch. What happens if Sildra goes away? What does the engine become after that?
Great insight, sir. Great analysis as always. Hey, we go. No, I really enjoy listening. Again, I think I genuinely think
it's fun talking to you. You're my boy,
I know,
Blue.
Right? Yeah, same, buddy. Well, and again, you are genuinely thoughtful. That I can tell you've thought about this stuff, and that you not a lot of people would think
too much for a 42-year-old,
right? Sometimes you do think just, hey, ban this, done. So I do like that you look at it past it. Well, what does it look like now if you do ban this? That's really great. So that was the main 6 elements. We've been talking for a while, but there's 2 others I want to touch on, which won't take as much time, and we'll put them together. Light and dark.
They're both terrible monos, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. Mono light. Tell me what mono light and mono dark looks like. That'll be the day if that's ever like somehow mono viable. I don't know what that is, but
Necrom tries to make it viable.
I think I did try one way back in Opus 8. There was like was it Telica? There was like a forward that let you discard light and dark for CP. I think it was like some Telica forward or something.
Yeah, it's Telica, yeah.
That didn't work out. Don't ever try that deck. But so in general, the light and dark are supposed to be the power cards. Are they still that way? They still have the restriction of discarding for 2 CP. I think anyone could say that multi-elements have definitely encroached on their space quite a bit.
100%, yeah.
Tell me about light and dark.
Yeah, there's cute things. 4-drop Tidus, strong card. Also EX Burst. That doesn't hurt, right?
Never
There's
hurts.
not a ton in the light and dark category that X Burst in a meaningful fashion. That is certainly one of them. Kadaj is still viable. Anytime the meta has a strong break zone interplay, I think Kadaj is always going to be a strong tech. You are seeing the whole Arc
Chaos,
the Arc Chaos combo right now, which is kind of interesting to watch. But running 6 dark cards, you're going to lose a game sometimes because you just couldn't do anything. It just happens. Honestly, when I'm building a deck now and for competitive versus like locals or friendlies, I'm going to take something to a store championship, a Materia Cup or whatever. When I'm trying to fill those last 4 slots in a build, I don't automatically go look at light and dark anymore. I actually start, like you mentioned, with the multi-elements first.
Yeah.
I'm running 3 different colors. What are all the combinations of those 2? Where are my earth water cards? Where are my water fire cards? Where are my fire earth cards? What are those? And are any of those worth putting in here? And then if not, maybe I'm like, all right, well, let's throw Kadaj in the bitch and just see what happens. It's just not. Are there good cards? Of course there are. In all elements, there are good cards here. But, just like I'm running one of a Behemoth K because I can, and it's interesting and you have to worry about it. Sure, let's run one Tidus in there.
Yeah.
I'm not running them specifically like we were back in the day, right? Where Eldnarsh fixed you.
Yeah.
Eldnarsh Chaos, boom, like you were done. They don't do that anymore. They're not that strong, if that makes sense, anymore.
Yeah. Well, and so like light and dark, the only thing really unique to them as elements is a bunch of restrictions that you can't discard them for CP.
Suzaku is one of my favorite cards they've ever created, and I cannot realistically run that in anything competitive because of the restriction of having to break something first.
Well, and they can't be on the field they can't. So if you, like you said, if you have 2 different dark forwards, well, they can't be on the field together unless, of course, you have like something to support that with a chaos backup.
Right.
But so with all these restrictions, ideally the idea was that, but they should be stronger than anything else. And like you said, currently, I think only really Kadaj and Tidus have like a unique enough place that they kind of fit that. And I think Steve mentioned this in his review of this set too, where he said they seem to struggle to either they don't make them strong enough, so it's not worth all the downsides, or you get Stern Leonis and Mashari, in which they're too strong. And so is there any way to fix that? Should they look at maybe you can discard them, but what if it was like you discarded them for blank CP? So like it doesn't color, I don't know. Or should they just be left alone and like actually they're just fine the way they are?
No, I think they're fine the way they are, and only because there's so few per set.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's four typically, right? 2 light, 2
less
dark.
even.
Sometimes less, yeah. Particularly with multi-element coming into the thing. So I think it's fine to, I don't think they want to get into generating non-colored CP.
That's fair.
In whether it's light or dark cards that do it or some other thing. I don't think they want to get into that game. That makes it a little challenging to explain CP in an easy way to a new player. True. Well, there's this, elemental CP, and then there's uncolored CP, and Magic the Gathering doesn't, they do that, right? So they have a fire and 2, and okay, to us that's 3, one of which has to be fire. That makes sense. But then they do have other things that, dull for 2 non-colored mana. And I've always thought, I get it, but you have to understand the game before that card makes sense to you. and why it might be strong in a particular deck. I don't think Square Enix wants to go that route. I wouldn't encourage them to go that route. I don't think Dark and Light is printed in a meaningful quantity to make it mandatory that it go that route. I'm happy with the way it is. Would I like to see them a little stronger or as strong as they are with a little less restriction? Yeah, because I think it's always fun to play a card that could be I bet you didn't know I was running this.
Right.
You know, I always like that aspect of the game. When somebody throws something down, and I've been playing since, Opus 5, and I have to read the damn thing. Like, I like that. So I'm fine with them the way they are. Maybe peel back the restrictions a little bit because multi-element has certainly taken them over.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point, though, that, they don't release that many, so maybe it is best to leave them alone. But I really like your point, too, and that was supposed to be one of their benefits, is that because they weren't an element, they could go anywhere, like you said, and that I do like that, too, is, haha, surprise, there's that one of Kadaj. Oh, surprise, there is that, one of thing Galdes back in the day. Or, of course, everyone was running Veritas, the Opus that came out. But, I liked those. Oh, you didn't expect that card, did you?
Yep. And there's always the implications, like, that's one thing I love about TCGs in general. We see cards that never saw play all of a sudden becoming meta staple 4 years later. Like, I love that about TCGs. I will tell you, one of the best light dark techs right now is frickin' Emperor.
The Dark
taking
Emperor?
Dark Emperor taking action abilities and special abilities away from your opponent. That is devastating right now to some decks. Devastating to some decks. Screw your Warrior of Light. Yeah, he's 10 with 5k, but you ain't taking something out on the way. Like, you have to deal with this card. And I love when things like that happen. And I'm sure, a set from now, nobody's going to be playing the Emperor. But I like seeing stuff like that revitalized, even if it's only for a little while. And Light Dark serves that purpose a hell of a lot better than trying to revive elemental cards.
Yeah, very fair. Someone on stream, please. I want to see someone have the lockdown setup with Rydia, Warrior of Light, Une, the Porum, Legend Porum, and they've got all these action abilities that the moment you sneeze, they're going to... And I want to see you just plop down the Emperor and then just lean on your hands and be like, what would you like to do? Oh, that's right. Absolutely nothing. All of that is useless.
Hope you're holding a cactuar, buddy.
Exactly. Fantastic. Michael, we have been talking for quite a while, sir. We hit all the elements. Is there anything else? We did it. Woo, good job. Was there anything else you wanted to mention while I've got you here on stream or go into?
No, just, I love the game. Like, does it have its flaws? Sure. Can we talk about its flaws? Yeah, absolutely. You should be able to talk about that stuff in a meaningful and polite way. And we definitely achieved that today, I hope. And
absolutely.
If people disagree, fine. You put it in the comments and let's chat about it. If you're mean about it, I'll ignore you. And so, but I absolutely love the game. I'm so happy, Travis, that we've got a competitive season again. It has been so nice going out, seeing friends that I hadn't seen in 2.5 years because we only interacted through the game at events or online, and seeing people in person and meeting new people, and it's just been an absolute blast. I've had some great matches so far this season. I've met some wonderful friends. Shout out to Devin, who knocked me out in the top 8 in Kingston. I don't know if he's watching this or not, but like, I didn't know him 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Last 2 tournaments in Canada, I played them in both tournaments, and it was a delight each time. We have fun. We talk about interactions. We joke. Like, that's somebody I never would have met if it weren't for this game. And so, some cards suck. Some should be banned. Some decks suck. Some decks are mindless. But, man, I wouldn't trade it for the world, brother.
I need to change your TV, your radio show to Thoughtful Check Radio. You're just such a polite and positive and thoughtful person. And of course, I will echo your sentiments. It's been, for me, my focus, of course, was going to be always casting and trying to do announcing and commentary.
Yeah.
But there are times I felt jealous, like, man, I kind of wish I was there with them, like getting to watch them play and then getting to hang out with you guys afterwards. So hopefully in the future...
it's put in the same boat because I love doing the commentary, and I'm like, oh, would I rather be there or would I rather do the... all right, fine, I'll do the commentary for this
Yeah.
one. Like, it's the same boat. You're like, "Grr."
Well, and like I miss the in-person stuff, and I miss getting to just talk with people one-on-one. But one thing I love about comedy is that the pressure isn't there. Whereas when you're a player, you know, you got to perform and you want to do well. And so like I'm always grateful to not have that pressure. It's like I can just watch them play. I don't have to feel that pressure of just like, oh my gosh,
how am I going to justify to my wife that this hotel cost $300 and the flight was $400 and I went 2 and 5?
What do you mean you went 2 and 5? It wasn't my fault. There was EX person every match I ran into.
Right,
like,
every single one. Oh, soiree!
Yeah. Curse you, soiree. Michael, you're a true pleasure and a gentleman and a scholar, as they say.
As you are.
I appreciate that. All of his relevant information will be in the description below. If you haven't checked out his Twitch before, check it out. He puts on great work. I will, of course, join him for his Legends review when that comes up. And, I'm sure you'll hear me. I will be doing the Australian Materia Cup this weekend, so tune into that.
Nice,
I'll post
very
that in
nice.
the Discords and all that. Michael, anything you want to plug?
No, just come on over to ReadyCheckRaideo, hang out with us, doing the shows, doing the FFTCG streams, doing the tabletop streams when we can't do locals. We open boxes and stuff on the table and see all the other streamers that volunteer and help out on the channel. Give them your likes, your love, your thumbs up, that kind of stuff.
Fantastic. And please leave in the comments below, what are your favorite elements? What elements do you think? What do they need? What do they not need? What's better mono support? Let us know. And until next time, take care.